All right, everybody. With us this week, we're joined with Coach Phil Martelli Jr. of the Bryant Bulldogs. Go Dogs! We're proud Bryant alumni, so we're always happy to talk some hoops and happy to talk to the coach. But, Coach, welcome to the show and happy early holidays. Happy early holiday hoop fest. That'll be this upcoming Saturday, so we're really excited about that. But how's everything going? And welcome to the show.
Everything's good, guys. I appreciate you having me, and certainly happy holidays. It's as you said that I just looked down at the bottom of my computer to see the date and realized that Christmas is in 11 days. So I'm pretty much right on brand. I got nothing for my wife, and hopefully she has bought herself a few things that I can wrap up. And otherwise, it's going to be some probably quick internet shopping on the bus ride down to Elmont on Friday.
So we've declared this the BBB Bowl as well, because we just had Pat Scarry on a couple weeks ago, friend of the program. Nothing but great things to say about Bryant too. He always has great things to say, but this is some huge stuff going to this holiday hoop fest next weekend.
No doubt. And I mean, Pat's a great guy. Has done an incredible job there. I was at Delaware when he took over there, and brought it from a program that couldn't win a game to perennial CAA contenders. I was going to say Colonial. It's still the Colonial in my eyes, but the whatever it's called now, the Coastal. But perennial contenders there. And it is. It's one of those games that I look at and go like it's like a perfect neutral site game. And this will be year 2 of basically what will end up being a 3-year series. They came to us right before Christmas last year. We were supposed to go there this year. The opportunity came to play at UBS as part of this. Originally it was going to be a doubleheader, now a tripleheader. And hopefully people get down and support it because, I think it'll be 3 really good games. It's 6, I think, conference contending teams that will all have a shot, to play in the NCAA tournament and certainly for their conference tournament championship. So, yeah, we're excited. We're excited to get going.
Yeah, and going back to your Christmas shopping note, I mean, in your defense, you've been a little busy.
Slightly busy. Now, this would be the case regardless of the situation, but yeah, it's been a little busy. Thank God for the internet and internet shopping. That has made the world much easier for me. And usually she'll send me a couple links and I'll go on there. And my goal is to try and do it as fast as I can. Like, I'm surprised the credit card company doesn't call and be like, why were there just 7 charges in 4 minutes at 7 different places? But
efficiency.
But that's always my goal, is to try and knock it out of the park as quickly as I can. See if I can. The hard part for me is the presentation. I'm not a good rapper. I don't. My wife is like pristine with hers, and I'm like, I just tape it up somehow and throw it together.
The guy cheat code is the bag and nice tissue paper.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can never go wrong because it's like, if it's a nice bag, it might cost you a little bit more. You can never.
No, you can't go wrong.
And they don't know what it is either.
We gave you an out, man. We gave you an out. We're like, no, you've been busy, whatever. You're like, no, this is just too honest for your own good. So we won't take any blame for that if the Christmas presents show up on the 24th.
There you go.
That on the record. Let's dive into it here. So to understand where you're at, we've got to understand where you came from, right? And obviously your dad is a longtime coach in the D1 ranks. Your mom won 2 national championships, which is something I learned today.
3 national championships.
3. Excellent. The Wikipedia
and lost
was wrong or whatever.
They lost her senior year in the national championship.
Wow, that's crazy.
We're tied together. My wife lost her senior year in the Division III national championship. She played at Eastern Connecticut.
So it is very safe to say that your family bled and continues to bleed basketball. So, what were those experiences for you growing up, and what made you fall in love with this sport?
I love being part of a team. I've always been drawn to that. I remember being a young kid and just like super excited to be part of a team, whether it was my Little League team, whether it was, any of the basketball teams, my CYO team, whatever it was growing up. I love being part of a team. And I always say this, like, I don't know that I was ever the best player on any team I ever played on. Even as a young kid, I was lucky to be on some really good teams, really close friends and friendships and things. But, for me, it was always being part of a team, being a teammate, playing your role in something that's so much bigger than you. The individual sports I never really was into golf or tennis or, any of that stuff. It was always the team sports. And, so that being part of that and then growing up around it, seeing what teams can do, and really seeing the way it brought people together as a young kid, growing up, to be able to walk into that locker room and see guys from everywhere, guys from North Philadelphia, guys from Central Pennsylvania, guys from Wisconsin, guys from Toronto, guys from all over the world, Finland and different places, Poland, to see that bring people together always had an appeal to me. So that was kind of it. And we weren't forced into it. My brother coaches too. He's an assistant at Penn State now. And, it's funny. I was the one early on that knew I wanted to coach. Jimmy was not necessarily on that path and eventually got there. So it's funny how the two of us a year apart, I was 11, 12 years old and knew I wanted to coach. He was not. But then once it got to a certain point towards the end of college, he realized, I want to do this too. And there's just something about it. And I see it now on the other side of it. I have a 14-year-old that I see him headed down that path. For better or for worse, I see him headed down that path. I'll try to talk him out of it, try to talk him into a, beers, business, and balls podcasting career or something, but I see him headed down that path too. And kind of the same things that I was kind of going through at that age, I can see him going through it and kind of, and he's actually got a brighter mind at that age than I ever did. And some of it is being able to access so much through the internet and stuff like that. But, it just is. It gets into you, and you have a hard time getting away from it. And it really bleeds through my whole family because, as I said, my wife played. She's been a successful coach herself at different places. My father-in-law is a long-time high school coach in Connecticut. So, to have that and be around that as much as we are, you're bound to love it or you're bound to hate it. And fortunately, growing up the way we grew up, we grew to love it.
I'm glad you brought up your son because we know your father's legacy and you're building yours and your family has the legacy. But I was at a game last year and I was catching up with Big Red. So shout out to Mike Rosenthal. And there was, someone with him and we're sitting down and I'm listening to him talk and I turn around. I'm like, this kid knows ball, the IQ, the gameplay, all of this stuff, realizing after it was your son. But I was like, you are, at the time, 12, 13, you are above my knowledge. And we're talking to coaches and players, every single week. It's like, hats off to you. And then, he also gets fired up,
yes,
any foul call, any missed basket. I was like, okay, young Martelli, there we go.
God help the refs if you make a bad call. But he's
been very much into it for a long time. And I don't know if you guys would remember this, but in 2000, I guess it was 2014 when I was actually at Delaware. We won our championship. We're going to the NCAA tournament. My dad was doing the same, and Philip would go to all my dad's games, and he would dress up in a suit and tie like my dad, and he'd carry the clipboard. He was, at that time, 5 or 6, I think. He must have been 5. And, he did that, and he was so into it then. And he'd go home and he'd play pretend games where he was the coach. Then he was the players, then he was the mascot, then he was this, then he was that, and he would do the press conference. I mean, he was been so into it for such a long time. And now to where he's at, to be playing, but be following it as closely as he does. And, every score and every highlight and every analytic. And I mean, he's got it all. He does. I give him credit. On his travel team right now, his coach is a really, really good coach. And, he says Phillips is assistant coach. Phillips sits next to him when he's out of the game. He sits next to him on the bench. I see the two of them having dialogue like a head coach and assistant coach would. But that's him. And
I gotta pull it up.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. Wow. Holy crap.
Then he grew up to now he weighs, he's a skinny twig of a 14-year-old, but taking his shirt off during a championship game a couple years ago and running on the court with no shirt on. I'm like, dude, you better have a milkshake or something. Do some push-ups before you're taking your shirt off. But.
That's awesome. So, obviously before Bryant and even before Delaware, St. Joe's University in Philly, you had a lot of cool experiences there. You played for your dad, you captained the team to 2 NCAA tournament appearances. You ran the offense with Jameer Nelson. How did your basketball journey change once you went to St. Joe's?
Well, I went there, and it's funny. I always say this. I use the term play loosely. I was on the team. I put the uniform on. We had good teams, really good teams that because of Jameer and Delonte and Pat Carroll and some of those other guys, Marvin O'Connor, like I was able to get in a lot of games, with a couple minutes to go. I wasn't quite as popular as Timmy Kiggins, but that was my, he's a lot more popular than me. His off the court, showmanship, I think was a lot different than mine was. I was a little more reserved, but
no one's chanting the Phil Martelli name to get in. They are chanting Kiggins and pestering.
America's favorite walk-on. That is Timmy Kiggins.
So, I went there again, knowing I wanted to coach, and I went there with the thought of obviously I've been around that program and been around my dad so much, but to be around it every day, was really important and to kind of see all the inner workings of it, and I knew a lot of it, but there was still quite a bit I didn't know and see. And I was fortunate during my junior and senior year, maybe I did some film work. So I would do some projects and do some different things, in between during the season, really, in the off season. And that's when it was like dual deck VCRs, trying to copy. I remember doing New Jersey Nets were really good at that time. It's when they went to back-to-back finals, Byron Scott, and doing some video projects with them and showing Jameer some stuff, like some Jason Kidd stuff and things like that. But it was dual deck VCR. So I had the VHS tape in the one and I'm, cutting it to the other, send it to VCR 2 and, sitting there tape to tape, which was cool. But, it's obviously a lot different now, but it was just an opportunity to kind of grow and start to learn some things and try to get a head start. And then on top of that, doing camps in the summer was really big, getting out and going to different places, working Rick Pitino's camp at Louisville and Skip Prosser's camp at Wake Forest and doing, the old hoop group, Eastern Invitational, doing 5-star camp, being around a lot of guys and actually a lot of guys that, I flip on TV now and I see them on the sidelines of, NBA and college programs that I got to meet and connect with and stay in touch with. So, really was an invaluable experience. And really, again, to be part of that team, to be part around those guys. I mean, there are some really, really long-standing relationships. There's actually a lot of guys in coaching from those teams. Mike Farley, who's my best friend in the world, is an assistant at Notre Dame. Dwayne Lee is an assistant at George Washington. Jameer's the GM of the Delaware Blue Coats now. Bill Phillips is an assistant at Delaware. So there's a whole line of us. John Bryant's an assistant with Chicago Bulls. So, a whole bunch of us that have been, kind of stayed in the game and stayed around coaching and stay in touch, pretty regularly.
So, obviously coaching's sort of pre-written as your destiny. You want to go into that. And then Howie Dickenman, Connecticut legend, gives you a job at Central Connecticut, of course. That makes you the youngest full-time assistant coach at the time. So you're this 22-year-old kid that's right out of playing basketball in D1. And now you're, thrusted right into working for Howie, accountable for a portion of the program. What did you have to learn about yourself as a coach at that time? How did you grow in that year, in those next couple years, and what did you have to learn?
Yeah, so when I originally went there, my title was senior staff supervisor, some crazy title, basically like an ops guy. But at the time, I could be on the court with that title, so it was perfect. So I was able to be on the court. You could work camps and stuff in the summer, so the big recruiting camps, I was able to go and work and be around, the good players. But, with Howie, it was very different. It was a very different environment than what I'd been around at St. Joe's. So that was very much a learning curve. But really the work ethic that it took, and the constant kind of grind of this, that you have to constantly be ready for the next thing or thinking about the next thing or, on top of the next thing. So, that was huge. So that first year, major learning curve. We actually went to the conference finals as a 7 seed, I think, in the Northeast Conference that year. And then Chris Casey, who's the interim head coach at Fairfield right now, he left to go to St. John's. And I was actually in the middle of – I gone down to Clemson. Oliver Purnell was the coach there and offered me a grad assistant job. And the manager who picked me up and dropped me off at the airport on my interview visit down there was Will Wade, who's now the head coach at McNeese State. But I mean, that staff was riddled with guys that high level coaches, and Shaka Smart was not there yet, but would come like a year later. Kevin Nickelberry was there, who was the head coach at Howard for a time and had been at LSU and Georgetown recently. But I basically accepted the job and got back. And on my way back, something just said to me, like, I don't know if this is right. And I didn't take it. And eventually got bumped up at Central. And then that's when I became, the youngest full-time head coach. And more importantly, about a month later, I met my wife in Connecticut. She's from Connecticut. She came to work our camp at Central. And had I taken the job, I wouldn't have met her. And God only knows where I'd be right now. But but with Howie, it was like the constant, like there was an edge there all the time, good or bad, there was an edge all the time. And it was always like, all right, I got to make sure I'm ready for the next thing. And that really has served me well through my time. His lessons, and really all the guys I work for, their lessons, I mean, I feel them every single day. I feel them there's not a day that's gone by doing this that I don't, like, that's a Howie Dickerman, or that's a Joe Mihalik, or that was, something that we did in Manhattan, or that, like, it's a constant, reminder of those guys and kind of the impact that they had on me.
I mean, it's crazy that you can look at it now and it's like everything does happen for a reason. It's like, wife, kids, future. It's like that whole, just on one decision. The dominoes really could have.
No, and I haven't, like, we could go on and on about things that I could tell you that this job that I really wanted to get, that I didn't get, and the guy went a different direction, and then 7 months later, the guy, they finish the season, the guy gets fired. I'm like, man, like it's like up and down the line of like all these things that it does, like it really does. It all happens for a reason, and you never know till you really get to the end of it and you go like, man, like I can't believe that all worked out that way when I thought it had to go a completely different way. So
it's crazy. And with all of those experiences, you mentioned obviously Central Connecticut, but Manhattan, Niagara, Delaware. You then also had a quick stop in the G League with the 87ers, which are now the Blue Coats. How different was that to college hoops, just in terms of preparation or coaching, or even just like talking with players, because you have guys that are at the college level looking for that mentorship, but then you also have in the G League where it's like, people are either career G Leaguers, but they're also trying to get to that next step. Is there a lot different, between the two scenarios?
There was a major difference. One, I felt like I was getting my master's or PhD in basketball that year. Just being around the people I was around and the meetings I was in and the conversations that were being had, like it opened my eyes up to a whole bunch of things, offensively, defensively, personnel wise, some analytics stuff that just, again, like those places have a staff for everything, right? Like there's a staff of analytics people. There's a staff for this. There's a staff of, like, we don't have that in college, and they're just worried about basketball. And the biggest adjustment for me, to be honest with you guys, was we would practice at the University of Delaware. So I lived about 35 minutes away. So I'd leave my house, I'd drop my kids off at school and then drive down there. So I'd get there at, 9:15. We'd practice at 10. Practice would be over. I mean, we'd be out of that gym by 12 o'clock, even if we met for a few minutes after. Some days we'd go and grab lunch. But those guys, we didn't have offices because we were practicing in UD's practice gym. So those guys would go back. They had townhouses that the organization had gotten for them. I was just going back home to Media, Pennsylvania. So I'd go home and I'd get home at like 1 o'clock, 1:30, and I'd be sitting there, my phone doesn't ring for an hour. And I'd be like, start to get nervous those first couple, weeks. Cause I'm like, all right, am I missing something? And I'd call the one guy, the other assistant, Dan, who's a longtime NBA guy. And he's, he like answered, what's up? I go, what's going on? He's like, nothing. What's going on? I'm like, am I missing something? He's like, what are you talking about? I go, I don't know. Like, I haven't heard from anybody. There hasn't been a group text. There hasn't been a whatever. He's like, no, like there's nothing going on. Like, see you tomorrow,
Yeah.
And so that was very different. I liked that part of it. I liked that it was just basketball. the IQ of those guys, people have no idea how high the IQ of any pro, not an NBA player. Like, forget LeBron is off the charts, right? Like, guys in the NBA off the charts. But even the guys in the G League, like at that time it was the D League, but even those guys, like I say this all the time, like we wouldn't watch film of a team until like 45 minutes before the game. Some days you're playing back-to-backs, but 45 minutes before the game, we'd be in the locker room, we'd put on the screen, these are the 5, 6, 7 actions we're going to have to guard tonight. And this is how we're guarding them. And it was 10 guys would dress. 1 through 10, they'd have it. The moment they saw that action coming, they knew what they were doing. They knew how to guard it. And I'm telling you, 45 minutes before, like where I sit here now and go like, are we watching enough? Do we need to watch another day? If, we never walked through it. We never guarded it in practice. But those guys would pick it up. Hey, we're switching this one. We're not switching that. We're going to hard hedge this. We're going to level this, like whatever it was. And they picked it up. And then to your other point about like dealing with those guys want to be coached because the ones that are going to last recognize like this is their job. They need to be professionals about it. So I did our defense. We picked up Nate Robinson. First of all, we had 31 guys play for us in 50 games between guys coming, going. Now we had a GM that loved the waiver pool. He loved transactions. It was like a constant. He'd come in immediately after a game and be like, all right, I think we're going to trade, or we're going to cut Nadir Tharp. I'm like, he just won us the game. He just hit the game winner. He's like, yeah, but we can pick this guy up and then we can trade that guy. I was like, man, this dude is like, so we went 31 guys in 50 games. There was a couple guys that came down to play for us from the Sixers, but they weren't doing that a lot. We actually had a bunch of guys from the Wizards come up and play for us. They didn't have a team. But it was like we had Nate Robinson. So Nate's been in the NBA. He's won the dunk contest. He's super popular. He's played for Tom Thibodeau. He's played for Doc Rivers. He's played for all these guys. And he would come to me with like defensive questions. And I would sit there and laugh and go like, what are you asking me for? Like, I don't know anything. Like, you play for all these guys. You tell me. But that's how those guys approached it. Like, if you showed you knew your stuff and you showed you were prepared, they were going to come and listen to you and seek you out for advice. Now, there was a difference because we had some 19-year-old guys and we had some 29-year-old guys, and that's a big difference. In college, and it's becoming a little bit that way now, but, like in college, you're dealing with 18 to 22. Now it's some 23, 24s with COVID and stuff, but they're all kind of in the same sort of ballpark. But, we had Lorenzo Wade, who played at Louisville and San Diego State, who had a family. Like, he was doing this because he was like in between his season in South America. He was just trying to get a paycheck so that his wife and whatever, he had 3 or 4 or 5 kids, like, so that they were set, and he's 30 some years old. So sitting down with him was like sitting down with a peer, but Brandon Green, who was a 19-year-old out of Kansas who knew nothing, like that was like dealing with a college guy, and trying to like get him to understand like these are the things you need to do. But yeah, that revolving door and but to be honest with you, I'm glad I did it because the lessons that I learned personnel wise really translate into today's day of transfer portal and all that. And the basketball piece of it was very eye-opening and again, really, I say it gave me my master's, my PhD, whatever it was in X's and O's.
Yeah, because it's kind of crazy too, where it's like the team you won yesterday isn't the team you might roll out the next day, where it's like college. It's like, okay, we're on a little win streak now. I know the lineups to set. I know who works well and what. Tomorrow could be like, well, we traded this guy, we waived this guy, or they got called up.
There's no doubt. We had 3 guys meet us. We were headed towards a 3-game. I think it was 5 days, 3 games and 5-day trip to the Texas teams. So we were going to play Rio Grande. Then we were playing the Austin Spurs. We actually played them in San Antonio at the Spurs Arena, which was pretty cool. And then we finished up with the Texas Legends up in, I think they were in Denton or Fort Worth, Dallas area. And we had 3 guys meet us all along the way because we had just lost. One got hurt, one got called up, and something happened with the third. And, we picked 3 guys up, like literally met us in the airport, like, and you're trying to get them up to speed. And I mean, I just remember the one guy being out there and like blanking on his name and being like, turn to somebody, like trying to get his attention for a ball screen coverage. And I'm like, what's his name again? Like what, like, like that. And that's what it was. So you're 100% right. And then the other problem was when guys would get sent to us. And at that time, not everybody had a team. So we had Tim Lualu Cabaret, I think was his name, that plays, French kid who was drafted by the Sixers. He was a rookie, came to play for us. Chasen Randall played at Stanford. The Sixers had picked him up at one point in time, sent him down to us. Tiago Splitter, who won the world championship he was on a rehab assignment with us. Couldn't be more professional. Like it's amazing a guy like that's in his whatever year he was. When he came down for us, and not the same thing about the other guys, but he was the most professional when he came down. Mike Scott, who had been in the league for a while, came from the Hawks as a rehab. Daniel House, who's playing now, a lot. He came from the Wizards with us. Sheldon McClellan, who played at the University of Miami, was with the Wizards. Somebody else that they had sent us. So like when those guys come, now there's like all right, like we kind of have our mix, but like they're not sending them to us to sit on the bench. So it's like, all right, we got to play Mike Scott. Like the Wizards are sending him to us to play. Like, so you got to play that guy, like you got to play, whoever, like you got to play Chasen Randall. Like they're sending him to you, you got to play him. And now we had played against him 3 times when he was with the Westchester Knicks, and it's like this just a weird deal. It's a little bit different now because everybody's got a team, but yeah, there was some of that you're like, man, we just played against this guy like twice last week, and now he's playing for us. Again, it sets up well for the way we're headed in college basketball, I think, where with the way things have been going this week and the last couple of weeks, like, you might be seeing that pretty soon. We're like, hey, that guy played for Towson, and next week he's playing for Bryant or vice versa. So.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, the whole transfer. I mean, we're having a conversation now, and it'll probably be completely different next year.
100%. I mean, it's different than it was this time yesterday. It's already changed with, a ruling, one ruling changed it. Now the sudden guys that have been sitting out for 12 games looks like they're eligible to play, and they could play for 2 weeks and that could change. It's like it's a very, very weird deal.
From your perspective, like coaching not only college now, but obviously this G League stuff, what are your thoughts on people going straight to the G League rather than the traditional college route? Like, do you see like they're missing some kind of like, would they learn more because of that? Or are they missing some kind of fundamental piece because of it?
I think it depends guy to guy. The games are different. So I think there is some validity for certain guys to go and play there right away, and try to learn that game. But as we've seen, like that, it's so hit or miss, like there's guys that at 17, 18, it looks like, okay, well, he's just got to go pro. Well, then a year or two later, you're like, oh no, he's not ready for that. And you see college guys, right? You see college guys that, oh, he's a one and done. And then it's all of a sudden like, all right, maybe he's not a one and done and he's going to be here for 2 or 3 years or 4. And then you see other guys that like, they go to college and blow up and all of a sudden you're like, man, that dude, he's like a legit pro right now. So, I think it's just one of those like individual things. I think there's I don't think you lose anything by going to college. I do think you lose something by going to the G League right away. And then it's like, okay, well, now if you can't play in college, there's no fallback to that. Where if you go to college and, it takes you 4 years, but you can still maybe find a job, even if it's in, Lithuania or something, like you can find a job playing at the end of that. What my worry, if it were my son, that would be my worry, would be like, okay, if he goes and does this G League thing, it sounds great, but if it doesn't work, then what? If you get exposed there, then what? And maybe, yeah, you can still go to Lithuania and you can still go play in those places, but now you're 19 years old and it's like, those years are gone. But I think it's a personal thing. I mean, I'm, if somebody said to me like, hey, they're going to open it back up and guys can go to the draft right out of high school, I don't have a problem with it. I think it, it probably makes sense to some extent to not hold guys, but, with the understanding that there's going to be guys that make mistakes. When you open up those doors, there'll be some that have a lot of success, and there's going to be guys that, I haven't followed it enough to know what those guys are doing this year, but, I know there's like a couple of them that aren't playing well early and and it takes time. You see what it looks like in 3, 4, 5 years for them. And I love college basketball. I love the kind of the atmosphere of it, and I think there's a lot of benefit to doing that and having a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. I would, me personally, I wouldn't want to give that up. I would want that.
And that's a really good segue into what you are doing now, right? So you've got that mix of college experience, and you've got the G League, stint there, and then you get to Bryant for what really is sort of your first, number one, associate head coaching job. We all know the story. They were 3-28 the previous year. You guys had to do a lot of work as far as reinstituting the winning culture. And I think over those next few years, what you saw was the drastic improvements on both sides of the ball, right? And a lot of it was attributed to you actually too, right? Like the 3-point defense, the field goal percentage defense, holding opponents to really bad shots for the most part, some of the best in the nation at that point. So I guess, how much work did that take to sort of get everybody on the right track and to buy in what you guys were preaching? And, with the results on the court, was that anything that you guys did tactically, or was that just a product of what you were trying to build from a mentality of the fast and hard play and the culture piece as well?
Well, it starts with the players, right? It starts with getting the right players and a certain type of athlete, a certain level of athlete. So it starts with that. You got to have the talent, to do a lot of these things. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and I had never been part of a complete rebuild, and this was that for sure. And it's not just an on the court thing; it's an off the court thing. Trying to get people's mentalities, outside of that. And you guys know it. You were here during that time, getting people to be like, okay, basketball. There's a college basketball game. Instead of all right, what's going on over there? Okay, let's go. Over here. Trying to get that. To where people care and it matters and you feel that and they feel it. And
yeah, we can speak to it. It was like, that migration of, all right, it's a chore, right? Oh man, I got to go sit through a basketball game. Whereas now you've got people lining up to, for, days in advance saying, hey, I need to get this ticket. Right.
Yeah. And that's huge. And it's, it's a testament to the university and the culture at the university and the community that's built here. And, being a part of that and making sure that people know, we're trying to give you something that you can be proud of. And that's really been, the biggest thing to me in these last couple of months, obviously changing roles has been, making sure that people know that, you have a teammate right here, not just me, but our whole program, we're a teammate on campus. We're a teammate with, the business school. We're a teammate with admissions. We're a teammate with, the dining services, whoever it is, we want to be a teammate, across the board. So, certainly with the rebuild, it's that, it's kind of trying to ingrain that and get people to understand, we're going to try and do something that's going to make everybody proud. And it did, man. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of, trial and error with things, and hey, let's try this. All right, that doesn't work. Or let's try it. It didn't work, but if we tweak it just a little bit, it might. Or all right, we want to do that. We don't have the personnel to do it right now, but we got to go get the personnel to do it. So, it's all those things. It's the way you recruit. It's the way you scout. It's the way you implement things, the way you practice, the way, you do study hall, the way you do the weight room. It's, so many things, that go into it, and not just the final product that people just see. When I was coaching at University of Delaware, my boss there, Monte Ross, who's one of my all-time favorite people, huge mentor to me. He used to always say, he's all people see is the games. When we be going through whatever, we're spending hours on hours trying to figure something out or dealing with an injury or dealing with this. And he'd say, all people see is the games. And, really what that meant was yes, there's this whole world underneath that, but you got to do everything in your power to put forth the best thing you can, for those games. And, but it's all that work underneath that people don't see that, if you're not sharp with that, then when you get to game time and people are watching, they go, oh, well, what's wrong with them? So, it was a lot. It was a lot of those, a lot of long hours, a lot of long nights, a lot of, tough bus rides and different things of just constantly kind of going with your brain to go all right, what do we need? What do we need next? What do we need to fix? And that doesn't change, it doesn't change even with success. We're still doing that now.
And you mentioned the personnel part perfectly. And I feel like in the past few years, we've seen this high octane offensive players come out. I mean, you have a Peter Kiss, you have a Charles Pride, but now Sharif Gross-Bullock, I mean, you turn around and he could drop 40 points on a dime. How has it been having a guy like him in the program? And, how does the team, mesh with his style of play while also giving opportunities? I mean, I think this past week, Connor Withers dropped 30 points too. So it's like, there's always, opportunity for people to step up, but we keep seeing, Sharif's name come up in the news every time we watch a game.
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that I've asked them is if they really defend, and we have flipped that piece of it to where, I mean, we're top 100. We're like top 20 in a couple defensive categories. I mean, we've really, for the most part, have really defended. And, I've told them, like, if you do that, like, I'll give you plenty of freedom on offense. Like, I'll let you play. I'm not going to, I keep saying that to them. Like, have I gotten mad at like a missed shot, or even a turnover, and turnovers bother me a little more than missed shots, but I'm like, I'm not, as long as we're playing the right way and playing together on that end, like, I'm not going to stop and say, well, and I recently had a conversation with my friend, because I do, we're still not quite there offensively where I thought we would be based on the talent we have, the individual talent we have. But, like, I talked to a friend of mine that's coaching, a pretty good place, pretty good program. He's like, well, we give like serious shooting rules. Like, these guys can take this shot. These guys, blah, blah, blah. We can only take these types of shots. And I was like, I just can't do that. Like, I'm not going to do that, because I know if we defend, I'm more than comfortable with the individual offensive firepower we have. And again, you mentioned Sharif, fantastic scorer, better passer than people realize. He's able to make plays for people. Earl Timberlake's been fantastic. I mean, his numbers all the way around. He's done everything for us, rebounding, assists, steals, blocks, scoring the ball. I mean, he's done everything. Rafael Pinzon is wired to score, transfer from St. John's. Daniel Rivera has been a really nice addition, kind of as like a face-up 5-man off the dribble threat, finisher around the rim, super active, super athletic. And go down the line. Tyler Brailsford's had good games. Connor Withers has been really good for us, and in a scoring and facilitating role, kind of that point forward. He's getting his confidence back after 2 tough years, and kind of becoming back to the player he was when he averaged double figures as a freshman and a sophomore at UMass Lowell. Miles Latimer, is again another guy who comes in there like he's thinking about scoring and has the ability to score. Doug Eddert, certainly the same. So, those guys that are playing right now, like, and even the guys that aren't, like Ty Rochelle's a good player. Aaron Davis is a good player. Keyshawn Mitchell's a good player. Like, they just haven't gotten the opportunity with kind of these higher level games and more physical games and playing against older guys. It's kind of the day and the age that we're in right now. Like, they're just younger guys, and there's just a lot of older guys. So, but those guys have the ability to play, and, are pretty good offensive players too. So, as far as that goes, like, as long as they're defending, I'm good with it, because I believe in all of them, in their offensive abilities. And the biggest thing I just asked them is just share it, just share it. Like, let's not take any bad shots. We can get a good shot anytime we want. We have plenty of options out there. Just go share it on that end. If we're sharing it on that end, if we're defending and we're sharing it on that end, they don't get a whole lot of pushback from me.
I know you don't want the program to be defined by 1 or 2 games, but I keep coming back to this win against FAU, who was number 10 at the time a couple weeks ago, and I'm finding that has to be one of the defining moments for this program this year, right? So with a lot of the younger guys, with a lot of guys that are older but maybe haven't won on the big stage at all, I mean, what does that do to boost these guys' confidence to go down to Boca Raton, to beat a team that was in the Elite Eight and Final Four last year, actually? And, this is also 2 games after you get named the head coach, too. So how much of that is a marquee win for your program, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. It's great for everybody, right? Like, it brings some notoriety and some attention to the school, to the program. And the thing that I keep saying is that was a great moment. It can't be the moment. It can be a moment, but it can't be the moment of the season. But it is something that we can always draw back on. But the same can be said for every one of these games. There's things to draw back on from the Manhattan game, where we didn't play great and lose a game that, frankly, we should have won. And things we can draw back on from the Brown win, with Sharif found out with 10, 11 minutes to go and having to gut out, come from behind and gut out a win. There's things to be learned from that. Now, a game like that gives you more validation, it gives you more belief. It gives you the confidence now when you go into Cincinnati, you don't feel as daunting of a task because you're like, well, we did that against those guys, and really at the time, you're walking out of there and you're like, all right, they're top 10. Are they going to stay top 10? Will they, maybe we expose something that we'll drop them out. And then you see what they've done since. And you're like, okay, no, yeah, they're top 10. That was legit. So that's, it's a great moment, and I'm glad we have it. It's a great memory for these guys, and I want to build memories for them. But I hope it's just when we can look back at the end of the season, we can look back and say there was a whole bunch of those moments, and not just have it be that singular one. Last year, the highlight of the season was beating Syracuse, and it was awesome. It was awesome for so many people. But I think we all would have traded that for a chance to play in the championship game, and that's what, again, I keep saying it to them, and, win or lose with all these games right now, we've got to take lessons, we've got to learn, and we got to keep growing. And it's not coach speak, that's real. For us, what matters is January, February, and March. And it matters more than it matters for maybe Cincinnati or Xavier even, although it matters for them, it matters more for us because, it's going to come down to where you can get in the standings, and then, what you can do over hopefully 3 games in a week in March, and that's the reality of our level. So, the FAU, we'll take it. We'll run with it. And, it'll be talked about. I hope they make another deep run in the tournament, and that'll probably be up there every time they play in the, round of 32 in the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, whatever it is. They'll be talking about that game, and, well, they lost to Bryant. Good. That's good for all of us. But, I don't want it to be the one thing that we just go back on the season and say, well, at least we had that, and that happened on November, whatever it was, 17th, 18th, 19th.
And you get your reps in now for
the way we responded. People don't realize how good Howard is. Howard's very good.
Tournament team.
Team in the tournament. Exactly.
Yeah, they'll be in the NCAA tournament again this year. So to respond after really tough travel over a couple of days, we were zombies when we got back here that Sunday night after that game, and then have to play Monday night against a really good team and to beat them and really, kind of lead the whole way and, up until the last couple of minutes, leading in pretty convincing fashion. I was more proud of that, and that showed me more than really the win against FAU, but was the response to that said, okay, there might be something with this group. We just got to keep cultivating it.
Yeah, and you get the reps now for the America East play, right? Obviously you have a Vermont and UMass, which are, very talented and tough teams, but it's a different ball game than playing in number 10 FAU, where it's hey, if we can do it there, we should be able to get it done at home, during our own conference.
No, that's what it is. All these environments, all these teams. We've played, including Towson, we'll have played 3 of the top 20, 25 offensive rebounding teams in the country. So you're going to those places with a smaller group and battling. So those are things that we can always draw back on. So when we go play UMass Lowell, we can say, look, we did this against them. We're playing in really tough environments, and to play at FAU, to play at Rutgers, to play at Ole Miss, to play at Cincinnati and Xavier and all these tough places. And then to go to Vermont and say, okay, that's going to be a really tough place to play. But, hey, we've played in these places. We've done it. So, it's trying to grow the collective experience of the group. Everyone's got individual experience, but we're trying to grow it together as a group so that when we all walk into those places, we can say, we did this at this place together, and not just one guy going, well, I played against these guys however many years ago. And that doesn't really help you. It's that group experience to say, okay, remember that game when we were down and so-and-so fouled out and we came back and won. That's what we can go back to, and that's what we need to have. And that's what the non-conference is for, and as much as we'd love to go 15-0 or whatever. It's, you got to learn along the way, win or lose. So, they've been doing a pretty good job of that. I'm pretty pleased with the way they've grown up.
So we're pumped for you, Coach. We're excited to see, how the Phil Martelli era at Bryant plays out. I guess to close out here, you've touched on a few key elements, but what do you want a Phil Martelli Jr. basketball program to look like, and how do you want these teams to play? Could be this year, but just in general. Like, now you've been watching your dad do this. You've been watching your brother, your mom, your family in its entirety be around the sport. Now you have the opportunity to put the clipboard down and coach, right? And to you be making the decisions, right? So how does that program look like for you, and how do you want a Phil Martelli Jr. run program to function?
Well, one of the big things I talk to these guys about is I want them to play with a certain joy to them. And that doesn't mean like laughs and giggles and all that, but that means like competing hard, playing hard, want us to be competitive, want us to play really hard, with that joy of like, we're getting to do this that a lot of people don't get to do. I want there to be a respect. We talk a lot, and we've talked a lot in the program the last couple of months about respect, giving respect, getting respect. So, going out there and showing respect for the jersey, for the Bryant on the front, for showing respect for your family name on the back, and the way you represent that, every single game. And that doesn't mean that every ball is going in. It means the opposite, really. It means like, how are you reacting when it doesn't go in? What are you doing to help the team if it's not your time to score? So it's those things, the X's and O's, to be honest with you, can vary a little bit year to year with the personnel. This I'm not necessarily like a system guy, like, well, it has to be this way, all the time. I think at this day and age, with guys coming and going and the level we're at, you got to kind of put the best pieces together that you can get, and then figure out, how do you want to play from there? So, this year we've kind of found an identity on the defensive end, and switching and doing those things. And I do like playing that way. But that's not to say that on another year it couldn't be, hey, we'd be more, pressure, more, straight up zone, more whatever, straight man to man, whatever it might be. And then the offensive end, just want to play, with as much skill as we can put out there, try to space the floor. I love having that rolling ball screen, shot blocking big guy in the middle that you can throw it up to on the offensive end every once in a while and get a lob dunk, and you can go protect the rim on the other end. But as we're seeing this year, like, there's ways to do that, and you don't have to be, we got a bunch of 6'6" guys out there that are blocking shots at an incredible rate. So, for me, it's more of that, just kind of piecing together, like, get the best players that fit together, trying to find the best fit. And trying to play with a high level of efficiency. That's important to me, taking care of the ball, playing the right way, making the right plays, making simple plays. I heard this recently, like, basketball is a very simple game played by complex human beings. And it's so true. So I try to keep things for them as simple as possible and give them the simplest, like, this is what we're trying to do. These are the objectives. If we stick to those objectives and keep moving forward and keep improving them, then, I like our chances. And, I just want it to be a connected group, and keep them tight, keep them connected, keep them with each other, and not let things splinter or kind of fray, just because something happens that was unexpected or not the way we wanted it.
Awesome. Well, Coach, we know you got a Long Island trip to plan for. We're excited to root for you down on the island this weekend, but any closing thoughts and closing remarks to our listeners before we let you go?
No, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate, what you're doing here and what you've done as alums and all those things, and the support that you've given, and everybody. And I hope that, people in Rhode Island, alums of Bryant, people that are following this, that, they'll come out to a game, they'll come out and come see us. I love meeting all the Bryant alums I can meet, and, getting to know people. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about this is, like I said, connecting with people. So, definitely get out, come to see a game, come try to meet the guys. We'll set up whatever. Anybody that reaches out and says, hey, I'd love to get my kids in front of the team and take some pictures, by all means, we'd love to do it. So, appreciate you guys, appreciate what you're doing, and all the Bulldog fans and supporters out there. We're working hard every day to make all of you proud. So
we are. This is a very big conflict of interest for us, but Pat Scarry knows that we're not going to be rooting for him on Saturday. So, and he's okay with that risk. But best of luck, Coach. Thanks a bunch. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.